The motivation to destroy Israel, as we've seen, for example, in the case with Pharaoh or in the case with Herod, is actually to destroy the Israelites, not because they have magical Jewish blood or DNA, but because they're going to produce the Messiah. So the motivation that Satan has to destroy Israel as a nation and as a people is precisely to destroy the messianic lineage, which has been promised since Genesis to the woman. So Satan has had this desire to stamp these people out, and by extension now to stamp Christianity out, right? Because he hates the seed of the woman, who is now the Christian church, but is also Mary. So that's the whole purpose of the proto-evangelium in Genesis 3:15, and why Satan had such a motivation to try to destroy these people.
One of the problems I have with the Bible is that you kind of see that like Jewish supremacists like look on Gentiles in the Old Testament too. Like they're like the chosen people, and like in the Old Testament, I feel like Gentiles are presented as like lower than them.
Yeah, but I already covered that, because earlier we were talking about how the reason that Israel had that attitude was because they were promised to produce the messianic line and the messianic seed. So they had to have that insular self-defensive attitude against the nations around them, and Satan was who motivated the nations to try to stamp out the Israelites, only because they were going to produce the Messiah, not because of any magical Jewish DNA. So after the birth of the Messiah, those principles of, how to treat outsiders, this kind of stuff, are now applied to the church, which is the true Israel. So it was appropriate for that time for Israel to have laws of warfare, self-defense, etc. That is no longer appropriate now that the church is the fulfillment of Israel and is the true Israel.
Oh, okay, that actually makes sense.
Now the term Judeo Christian is a bit ambiguous, because one just simply might mean the old Hebrew revelation and then the fulfillment in Christianity, but it's kind of been twisted into a psyop to where we're supposed to think that Rabbinic Judaism and Christianity are somehow on the same pages, and they're not. So ultimately speaking, there is no, quote, Judeo Christianity post 2nd, 3rd, 4th century AD, because Rabbinic Judaism sort of codifies and crystallizes as an anti-Christian position. Prior to that, it was there was a period in the 2nd and 3rd century that was still kind of ambiguous. We've covered this in the many statements that we've made in opening debates with the Muslims, because we always have to point out that Rabbinic Judaism was not a monolith in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century. It took that period, and many of the Jewish scholars today are admitting this, that in those centuries is when you had the parting of ways. And so Judaism begins to be, even then though, by the 4th century, it still wasn't monolithically Unitarian. It's not actually until Maimonides that it becomes a kind of a quasi-confessional Unitarianism. But it was anti-Christian by the 2nd, 3rd century, and it becomes a codified Talmudic Rabbinic Judaism in the 4th and 5th centuries.
Notice that term is not even used until the 20th century.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lot what we identified with monotheism isn't a term,
Yeah, exactly.
Until the first time it's ever created is the 17th century.
In Orthodox theology, there is only Orthodox Christianity as the fulfillment of and in continuity with Old Testament Christianity. Yes, that's right. We believe the Old Testament Hebrews believed in the Trinity and in Christ. Looking ahead, we look back. It's the same faith. They didn't believe in a Unitarian generic deity. And once you understand this is really the end of Roman Catholicism. Roman Catholicism is premised on Unitarian Old Testament God, generic, and that's part of their argumentation for why natural theology and Thomism is true. If that falls, Roman Catholicism falls. It's false. That was the whole point of the argument that I had with Trent Horn. That whole debate is that. And you notice in that debate, Trent is mystified by the idea that the Old Testament teaches the Trinity. That alone should tell you that Trent is done. Trent is cooked. Trent is not somebody to be listened to. And yet, thousands and thousands of dum-dums continue on a daily basis to listen to Trent Horn. Amelia, what's up? Unmute.